Now, implications. It's a difficult thing for me, and not just for me. I think it should be difficult for people who think holistically. Clearly, this represents I don't want to overstate this because we have seen what the government is capable of doing in terms of being the literal big brother. But then I don't want to I also do not want to understate it, right? It really represents the federal government's ability to listen and see almost everything that a target does. Then the question becomes, well, who's the target? Well, if it's the CIA, generally we accept the CIA's operations are abroad. But as we saw with the NSA, Edward Snowden, we as American citizens also became targets. Just a blanket dragnet on all Americans. But there's another component to this. The other component to this is we are engaged. And when I say we, I mean the global community. We are globally engaged in cyber warfare of this magnitude and greater. And we are not the only people developing, and I'm speaking universally of the United States as a whole, us, we, the United States. We are not the only entity, nation that is developing these types of tools, these types of surveilling tools. It is as the best parallel, the best way to understand cybersecurity is to understand international security. Understand arms races, understand the need for nations to arm themselves with cyber weapons so that they can compete in the international community, right? In general, just so that they can be ready, just so that they can have enough cyber weapons and cyber arms to fend off an attack from a neighboring nation, or not even neighboring, but just a nation that wants to attack them. Right? It's the parallels. It's a direct comparison. And to that end, there's a tension that exists when we talk about WikiLeaks revealing this type of information and how it undercuts our operations abroad. The tension exists with the fact that our democracy and our Constitution really suggests that these types of weapons are these types of weapons are so easily used against American citizens that it's really difficult for these weapons to exist, and we know about them, right? It's a tension. It clearly presents the federal government with the opportunity to infringe on our rights in every way imaginable. But at the same time, knowing about it, fighting back against it, forcing the government to change their ways and to, what do you do? What do we expect? Here's the question, and it's better. This conversation probably goes best with a set of questions, right? Do we expect the federal government to unilaterally disarm their cyber warfare because of the implications that it has on domestic liberties, domestic privacy? And you can answer it however you want to answer it, right? But I'm still going to explore it, right? As we explore that, we do realize that every major nation that has the funding and the capacity and the technology to do this is doing this. And they're doing it to compete with the United States. So it's very comparable to a nuclear arms race. Do we unilaterally disarm? In an anarchical society in which every man is for himself. We have, it's not even a question of cybersecurity. It's not really a question of nuclear arms and that type of arms race. It really goes down to the very fundamental question of external security versus internal liberties, and the tension that exists in that world. It consistently exists and persists. And of course, somebody's already typing either in the comment section or in the chat room. They're saying, Anyone who would exchange liberty for the sake of security has neither, quoting Benjamin Franklin. I get that, right? But do we unilaterally disarm? Do we expect the federal government not to have this type of surveillance externally? Where's the balance? How do we find the balance? Because clearly, I don't think it's reasonable for us to, I personally do not think it's reasonable for us to say the U.S. government should not engage in these types of behaviors externally. I think it's 100% reasonable to say the United States, the federal government, absolutely must not engage in these behaviors domestically. But clearly, the existence of the tools externally gives them the ability to do it internally. But if we fight against it internally, then we undermine their ability to do it externally. Not necessarily. Let me phrase that last question, that last statement a little better. If through our fight against this internally, we demand unilateral disarmament, that's close enough, then we do undermine our ability to do it externally. So, I mean, it's a fundamental question that really has existed for a long time. And now it's just finding its way, fascinatingly so. It's found its way into cybersecurity on a scale that, I mean, even some of the science fiction movies, the cyber technology, cyber espionage movies that are in the movies don't really, in the movie theaters rather, don't really compare to just day one of Vault 7. It really doesn't. I mean, I'm sure some movie out there has captured this in their imagination, but the stuff that we're seeing is really fascinating and dangerous. Dangerous, especially if wielded by a system that is readily willing to surveil their citizens. No easy answers in this conversation, but I'm willing to definitely listen to yours.